Hi, Warriors. How's everyone doing today? Dollar giving up some of its overnight gains. Who thinks this dollar rally has legs, or do you think that was it? One day pop. AJ, how are you? Ingmar, put your thinking caps on. AJ, Blake, no, he knows. Mike knows. Me knows. My knows.
Nice one,
Uh,
Dale. Very well done, mate.
all right, Kman, James, AJ, Ryan's here, Steve, Marcus. Okay, Brand's a bear. No pop. All right, no pop for you today. No carbonated drinks. If it rallies, okay. It's correlated to the Fed battle. Now let me ask my teammates. Did you ever think there would be a time where financial markets would celebrate that the president is not going to fire the Fed chairman? Kind of like Erdogan, you know, turn us into Turkey. Doesn't Erdogan control his central bank? He tells them
Yes.
what to do. Huh?
Yeah, they got a revolving door on the front of it, the front of the building.
They have a front man that he tells what to do. All right. Anyway, I know our president would like that. Anyway, okay. So let's get to the dollar here and talk about this. Any big numbers today, Ryan?
Yeah, we've got the S&P PMIs, which are pretty crap in Europe so far. So everyone's waiting to see if the US is going to get more bad data. Things going to fall back even more.
Okay. So, decent little pullback. What was it? About two and a half or so?
Yeah, yeah, near
Okay.
that 113.
Yeah. So what do you think? Is there, I could see how there could be another high, and because, this was a pretty high reading. Okay. So if it did it again, it'd probably be an even tastier short. But, I am looking for these highs to be taken out. The question is, does the correction continue? Does the dollar have more? Does the euro have more downside? Does cable have more downside? Aussie's resisting it the most, and the yen is, another graveyard save. Blake, the pinball was going down the hole, and you flip the flippers almost simultaneously to get the ball back in play, back over the throw over, and now it looks like he wants to puke again. Um,
It's
anyway,
amazing. It's amazing how big of a piece of shit the dollar is. I was just saying it in the
yeah,
chat room. It is such a piece of crap right now. I mean, it's amazing. It's hard to see the dollar make any substantial gains here.
how about up here, Blake?
I mean, look, I'd love to be a seller up there. The question that I'm having is, are we even going to get anywhere near it? I mean, people are just selling
Yeah,
the dollar in mass on any rally. So I don't know.
yeah. I don't think this is a low. I think we'll take these lows out. I still think we'll see a 96 handle, but I was thinking that we might build the case for one more break if we had more upside here. I guess Elliott guys would call it maybe a 4, and then you get a 5 because, you know, this RSI at 20 is not the kind of thing I bet my book on for a low.
Well,
Okay.
I mean, I don't know about the other guys, because I haven't barely been following too much this morning, trying to just get my head on straight. But I'm hoping we get some two-way action around here in the dollar. I mean, I'm playing it on the long side this morning. I'm just not happy about it. It's very, very heavy. It's very hard to trade on the long side. That's what I'm finding.
Okay.
So,
Ryan, what do you have working?
What do I have working? Well, I actually got stopped out of my dollar yen shorts on that mess last night. Hit my trailing stop. So that was well in profit. So I don't mind that. We had a little dabble in Aussie dollar yesterday as it came down to support that 64, sort of 63.80-ish area.
Yeah.
And, well, got stopped out of that because played it pretty tight, and it's bounced again. That's more on the China stuff. But yeah, the dollar, it had a recovery, and then it's undone that recovery because we've been here before. You know, Trump's had these U-turns before, and then 5 minutes later he's U-turned the U-turn. So the market isn't, you know, saying, yeah, this is it, this is all over, we can carry on with life. It's saying unless we get concrete signed, sealed and delivered deals, you know, we're not ready to reverse everything that we've traded so far. And I think the market's completely right with that. Whether we can go, whether things get worse is another question. You know, euro dollar, I'm 115, 112, and everyone can piss around in the middle. That's it for me from that one. I said yesterday on, I think here and on the trade off with Michael that if we fail at 115, we could see 114, even 113. But I thought that might happen over a couple of days, not a few hours later. But that's the market we're in at the moment. You know, another headline, and we could be through 115. You know, it's we're playing that game, and all you can do when you're trading it is just pick your spots where you feel most comfortable, and don't be too wrong if it doesn't work.
Okay, this might be the last day you could turn in an ounce of gold to get over 100 pieces of silver. This is a pretty big move. It might just be the second drive, but you know, this doesn't happen often. So if we reverted to the mean, which is down around 60, you're talking about a 30% gain by just switching from silver to gold. If this is the beginning of a new decline, almost looks like the dollar did before its decline. You know, let's see, let me pull it back here. Yeah, okay. So this would be analogous to the 114 high in the dollar, and then, you know, we went to par, and then we went to 110. So look at these two. They look pretty identical, don't they? So that's the pattern I see there. So if we repeat, that means this is going to take out 80. And if we have equality, man, 125, 55, take you to 50. And in most of my career, that's where it traded. So, I mean, it's not a leverage play, but there's certainly, you know, a 30% gain in doing that if we get down to 50. So that's why I followed. Also, this is what needed to happen for silver really to have a bull market, is this gold-silver ratio to turn. So it doesn't mean it won't go down, but it means that now silver will look at the board today. It's pretty classic, right? 29 cents higher in silver, 61 lower in gold. I think this is a significant turning point. And that's really the most important things that I see. The bonds, you know, I think we're going to rally. It's a weekly. But I think I'm going to sell this rally. Like if we rally up to, this was the break, you know, when everything seemed to be falling apart. And since I don't think the dollar's bottom, I'm going to try the bonds up around, we get up to around 61.8, around the 90, 91 level, looking for something like this. So I'm going to try the TLT up there. This could just be, you know, ABC to correct this. I mean, this was, if there was anything ever impulsive, this whole decline didn't have one blue candle. I could color one if you guys would like. You know, any bond bulls out there, I'll use the brush. I'll try and figure it out. Can I paint candles different colors? I mean, what kind of service is this?
Try pink.
Pink. I like it. And I know that you were thinking about buying bonds, Kay. But
Um,
you wanted to see a capitulation under
yeah,
here first, right?
yeah. I think with what we heard over the past 12 hours, 16 hours, first from Bess and then from Trump, I think there is and also just want to repeat. Yesterday also we saw the bond flows of the PBOC from the first quarter, and the day before, by the Japanese investors, they sold less bonds than the market was actually thinking. And but I just think we are going to go back to my neutral level, and we are now re-entering on the US tens, which is anywhere between 410 and 430, with 420 in the middle, and we're going back there. And now let's see where the pendulum will swing to again. But I think we've got another, before this is over, at least another 10 basis points in the tens to just come back to 420, and which is the neutral, and that's where we can gravitate towards, and then we'll see. I agree with you. This whole story isn't over, because it only requires one bad news on the trade front between China and the US. Imagine that G slams the phone onto Trump, then hell will break loose again in the bond market, I think. But yeah, in the meantime, I think there is a case for just coming down and stabilize a bit again before the next headline drop. And to your silver, I agree. I've actually started to add some silver to my longer term position again today. I think the gold silver ratio may have peaked, and so I'm and silver also needs more positive. So if there is a bit of a thaw in the relationship between the US and China, Trump saying that he may be friendly to China, Bessent saying that the situation can't go on like this, then I think we may start to see a revival in silver as well. I don't know where gold is gonna go. I don't, because that's what I said on the flow show as well. Regarding the dollar, we are I think, in test mode now. We've seen headlines and their opposite, and comments and their opposite. But we are going to be in test mode now for the dollar. Situation is still fluid, but if it can't stand up, I think it's bad news. But we may have to let the week go by, or even next week, you know.
Yeah. Well, do we have any choice but to let time pass? Huh? Well, I mean, if you have an antidote to that, buddy, let me know. I'll
Oh
stop
no,
right
I
here.
don't. Dale, I
And
don't. Otherwise,
especially if you could reverse it, that would even be better.
otherwise I would still be 40 years old or
Uh,
45 years old. I wouldn't be
all right.
18 or 20, because
All
we
right, so let's waste another couple of weeks waiting around for a market to do something. All right. Anyway, uh, Blake, what do you think of risk here?
Um, I'm glad you asked. It's interesting, Dale, because I was just listening to a podcast this morning, and everybody's like, "Coast is clear. It's time to get in. Time to get long. We've got perfect mix of reasons to be long stocks here." And the perfect time to be long equities was at 5,100 earlier this week.
You did it.
Yeah, but here we are, 300 handles higher, and it's like, okay, so you want to be long here when you're coming up to 5,500 in the SP, which we already know is a big resistance. It's like it's a 50% back, and you want to get long now. In this environment, and Kman said it perfectly. It's like we don't even have a meeting set up with China, so let alone getting on the phone. Trump is obviously, he's just firing off different things, just trying to appease the market at this point in time. Whether it's not firing Powell, but he goes off the handle, and we are just one headline away from 300-400 points down again. So I don't know if one of the things about FX market, and here I'm gonna do you mind if I grab the charts?
No, go ahead, buddy.
Okay.
Oh, I
One of
thought
the
you
things
had
about the FX markets that I love the most, it's probably the most endearing trait of currencies is sorry, I'm just grabbing it right now. Is the sleuthing that the market does, that the FX market does. I mean, the FX market is the largest market. It really will tell you when something good is happening or something, maybe you shouldn't be trusting this. Between that and looking at between the FX market, looking at other markets, like look at what's happening with crude oil this morning. It can give you ideas on what you should or should not be doing. And one of the big ones right now for me is the Aussie yen. Aussie yen is trading really heavy here, and it hasn't sold off, but it hasn't really reversed. And this is one of those that, yeah, if we start getting, back above like the 92 yen level, I would feel more comfortable about being long risk in general. So this move right here, and we might get above it, but we have to really get above this like 92 yen level in Aussie yen. That would be the equivalent for me in the S&P getting back above 5,500, which is, basically here. And so I'm we talked about, and even this week, I put in a pattern in play on S&P down here at 5,100, and as you mentioned, Dale, and that was the time to be on the long side. Now that we're up against resistance, I mean, you might get a little bit of a squeeze, but I'm going to need further evidence to do that. I mean, you can see the market cheered last night, and by the way, that move happened right during a very thin period of the Asian markets, like literally Globex changeover was happening, and we saw the dollar yen. I think it ripped like 200 and some odd pips. I was actually going to be shorting the dollar yen later in Asia last night. But then we got this, this move from 140, 150 all the way to 143 whatever, because Powell wasn't going to be fired, quote unquote. But that move happened, and it's already unwound completely. Like we have like completely unwound it. I'm not saying that it's going to keep going from here, but this is, really critical levels, and it's all but unwound. And the equity markets are, still saying ho hum, ho hum. I don't know. I'm not trusting the equity markets here at 5,500. And even if they broke 5,500, I would be more apt to actually be on the short side a little higher as we approach the 618. This is the level that
What's
I
that,
really want to be.
5620?
Yeah, 5650 is the
50?
618
Okay.
retracement. That's what I got anyway.
Yeah.
Somewhere around there. I mean,
People will be trying it there.
yeah, I mean, look, the market's all about positioning, right? You get everybody's chasing, and that was one of the other one of the other analysts that was saying, that I was listening to this morning, is like, oh yeah, everybody's going to be chasing the market higher. Let them chase, and get long, on a break above here, and then sell it to them. Be the guy or the gal selling it to those guys, all the guys that are getting sucked back in. I don't believe the trade war is over. I don't believe we're even close to being over. So I would be more than happy to sell to any excited buyers above 5,500. And that's kind of where I stand right now as far as risk goes. Like I said, the time to be long was down here. The time to be long, I don't believe, is where we're at right now. You put together a trade deal between China and the U.S. Doesn't matter who it favors more. You're going to get a pop, but you probably want to sell into the rally, because I would play it on both sides in a situation like that, because I don't think there's any clear winner here moving forward. I think the long-term damage has been done, but
You're
that's
speaking about risk in stocks, Blake. So how do you compare it to what we've had from earnings so far?
earnings
Is the
haven't been
US falling off a cliff yet?
They haven't been bad. It depends what you're looking at. I mean, you could take a stock like UNH, for example. Whoops. And you can tell me how good those earnings were. But then the flip side is you go over to, Netflix, and Netflix is near all-time highs. So, it's been a mixed bag. So I'm not the good news is, I guess, earnings haven't fallen off the cliff all the way around. I mean, but that's backward looking too. I know that, everybody gives their forecasts and, and they're trying to give guidance, but we're also in an inflationary environment and a very unsure environment. I kind of get this anecdotal evidence because my wife is, she does, local curated gifts, but she does like corporate gifting. So, like big companies, like let's say like Johnson and Johnson, they come and do a convention here in locally, where we have a lot of conventions where I live. Big companies come in and they have these big, balance sheets, and they're like, oh, I'm going to buy, X amount of dollars worth of stuff, just gifts. Those budgets have been completely cut. And because these companies are unsure, they're just not spending. So orders have come to a screeching halt over the last month, like literally like to a screeching halt. Again, anecdotal evidence, but when companies are, big companies are just not making decisions, that means they're just not spending. And so that uncertainty, will eventually lift at some point. I just don't know when that is. So those are things that
Intel announced a big layoff.
yeah, they're laying off 20,000 people. Yeah. And don't and also don't forget that you go to last year, they didn't do forced layoffs. It's not a forced layoff. They were voluntary layoffs. Like one of my buddies who's 55 years old is officially retired after being, with Intel for 28 years. He was 55 years old and kind of pushed out the door, if you will. I mean, that's just, it's been happening for a long time. Yeah, our RJP says it's been laying off for months, actually a year with Intel. So, I mean, but that's what a lot of companies do. They reduce their costs, and it helps the bottom line ultimately. So I don't know. It's really interesting. You look at like, companies like Tesla. Tesla's got to bounce. I think like Tesla is like a great example of, let Elon go back to Doge or leave Doge, come back to Tesla. You get a pop in that, you sell these rallies. I think these trends that we're seeing are pretty well entrenched right now, and you got to trade into them. So anyway, that's kind of where I see risk right now. Let me ask you guys this. Let's talk a little bit about currencies. The euro is trading. I had it a lot different yesterday. Looking, obviously with technical analysis, you got to change kind of up what you're seeing. I had, bullish wedge playing out to the upside. But we stalled, really above the 115 level. A lot of dynamics have changed since yesterday. So now I have this in an ascending channel. But Ryan, you said, 112, you were looking to buy it. I'm not as lenient as you right now with that. I know you're saying 112, which would be right here, this purple line. I still am looking at like 112.70. I don't know how comfortable I'd be buying the euro if it drops below there. What is your I'm sorry, what's your reasoning for 112?
Just because it's one of my big 5 levels. I've got 5 massive levels on my chart. 112, 115 are 2 of them. So, yes, you could pick the levels in between, but if the dollar's going to change, it has to break 112. And if, we get more news that pushes the euro down, but it doesn't get through 112, then that's going to tell me something. The same way as if, this news washes out that we've got from Trump and it pushes back to 115. I don't care about the price action on a bank holiday Monday. And it was pretty obvious that we couldn't get through it again yesterday. So if we get up to 115 and it holds, that again proves to me that the level is worth being a level again. So that's where I may try a trade. But yeah, 114s, 130, 13s and a half. That's for the scalpers to mess around with.
Got it. Okay. Tell me a little bit about these European PMIs. They look spectacular overnight. So what do we got going on here? I mean, this is a bunch of crap as far as I'm concerned. Even the UK PMIs, they suck and win. So tell us a little bit about the data that we got overnight, because we got US PMIs that are coming out today.
Yeah, they're still in the mire. I mean, you look at that data and you think there's another reason why you think why is euro dollar up at 115, because the fundamentals certainly don't justify it at the moment. But then that's a reminder what we're trading. We're not trading fundamentals, we're trading dollar stuff. But yeah, there's no well, the green shoots were that over the course of this year so far, the PMIs were less crappy month to month, but we're still not seeing massive jumps into expansion, and we're even seeing some going backwards, as you can see from German services went from expansion to contraction again. So the malaise is continuing in Europe. Obviously, you read the comments and it's all, yes, we're worried about US policy and whatever. But here we are again, survey reports, private reports, central reports, all showing negatives, but we're not yet seeing outright collapses in the hard data. But for Europe, I mean, they've been walking along the zero line in growth and whatnot for the last year and a half, 2 years. So there's not much more downside they can do unless they tip into recession.
So, when you're obviously today we've got US PMIs coming out. Obviously the market really focuses on the services PMI, which we're expecting a little bit lower level, but the manufacturing PMIs, might dip in contractionary territory today, and that is one thing that could be a driver of dollars later today. So just keep that in mind. I know everybody, myself included, I'm hoping that we see a little bit of a dollar recovery. We get some two-way price action, because it's just been one-way piece of shit dollar, garbage move down. But up until yesterday, and Dale, you did a great job calling that dollar bottom yesterday. But if we get some decent data today, maybe the dollar can actually continue to catch a little bit of a bid, which would be nice. It'd be a nice welcome relief that the dollar bulls have not seen as of late. Kman, I want to ask you a question, because I want to really kind of focus on these commodity currencies. The Aussie, I mean, you want to talk about nasty. I mean, this is a nasty move. I mean, let me zoom in a little bit here. Just give me a second. So the Aussie, we look like we're going to break above 64 cents just a couple of days ago. Then yesterday, we had a double top, played out double top to the downside. Then, just as you think the Aussie's giving you a false upside breakout, then yesterday's news regarding, China gave the Aussie a lift again. Do we trust this? I mean, how do you want to play the Aussie? And then flip side to that is, and this is along the same lines, dollar CAD is just skating along this, lower trend line here. I have to imagine everything that's coming down the pipe for Canada is not good for Canada. I mean, but is it better for the US and worse for Canada? I mean, do you play the dollar Canadian on the long side here or on the short side? How are you viewing these commodity currencies right now?
Well, since you were on the CAD, I've got support all the way down to 137.10. To me, for the dollar CAD to continue lower from here, it will have to break 137.10. That is how I look at it on my picture, which is different from yours, but it's okay. Aussie 4,440, that is the Aussie dollar, but I'm looking at it from perhaps a bit of a different angle, and I know you don't like it, but I did buy. It's very small because it's testing the waters. I did buy a small Aussie yen today, just playing the fact that we may, after everything that's been said yesterday, have a little bit of a more positive overall risk environment, but fragile, but a little more positive. So I would be saying that Aussie may play a little bit of catch up on the rest. That is possible right now, but Aussie dollar, I don't have anything. It's just hanging around here and not knowing what to do. It's comparable to cable. Cable 133, pretty decent level, and we are hanging just around it. So these may be, as I said earlier on the show, we may be in a bit of a test mode here, whether it be for the dollar or even the currencies on the other side, and quite a bit will be depending on risk. I expect a few sessions, unless we see big variations in data, because indeed we can't forget we have data, and Regarding those data, the PMI, yeah, the numbers in Europe were bad, but I think rather than taking that 50 line for expansion or contraction in the numbers, I think the market is likely going to compare the US numbers to European or UK numbers. And if they're equally bad, it's not going to be a relief for the dollar, is it?
Yeah.
So that is more how I look at it. Like instead of watching that 50 line above or below, I'm rather going to compare the data on the one side of the oceans compared to the other side. Yeah.
Sounds good. All right, thanks, Kman. You know, I think the clearest picture out there right now, and it's been, you know, this is like I've told you guys on like, well, I've mentioned this so many times, and I was short dollar mex. I'm not short right now. Is I think the clearest picture out right there is the, you know, the rounded top and the dollar Mexican peso. It's breaking down. I know, Ryan, you still on the short side of this thing?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I
I
mean,
shorted some more at 63 yesterday.
Yeah, I think it looks great. It is a little divergent this morning. I'm just hoping we get I just hope we get a pop back up into the 70s for me to sell into. I mean, while we're below 20, there's zero reason to be long dollar mex, and I think it's just a matter of time before, you know, as I've been saying, you know, Mexico and the US have so much to work together with regarding immigration, EVs, Chinese EVs, drugs. I think Mexico is going to be the big beneficiary in 2025, and it was just a matter of time before we rolled over. So this one is the cleanest and the clearest picture in the market. And plus, if you do get a continued recovery in equities, the Mexican peso is a carry currency, and you know, sell dollars, buy Mexican pesos is still, or buy Mexican pesos across, you know, the board is still a decent trade, I think. So I still love this one. I want to be short. Well, it's below the 200 DMA. Just trying to get pops to sell into. So, Dale, I know you have your guest coming in. Is he here?
Yes, could you please promote George Robertson?
Yes, I will do so. So, Dale, any last comments before we give you the pass changeover?
Yeah, I think that there's still some more downside in euro. If it rips to a new high, I'd sell it again. I think dollar's going to test a par level, par 50, and then I think you could buy the euro for another blast. Maybe we get to that 117, 119 next time when the
All right.
Dixie's going to 9.6. But right now, I think they want to shake some of the weak, late to the party dollar bears out.
Yeah, let's hope they do. Hey, don't forget, guys, the Liberation offer is going 40% off our monthly subscription. That's the only subscription we have right now. It just basically gives you guys we backed up prices to about 5 years ago. And then plus for trader funding program, we actually have a 30% off that is happening right now on the one-step assessments. So make sure if you want to learn how to get funded, you can go instant funding. So you can get access to capital immediately. Or if you want to do the more efficient way, money wise, you can do the one-step assessment. You can access up to $1 million in trading capital. So check out the trader funding program. You can find it right on ForexAnalytix.com. And remember, the one-step assessment is where the 30% discount is applied right now. We have a lot of people. Actually, we just one of our $1 million accounts. He just re-upped this week after taking a big payout at the end of the year. He's back again, and so we have a lot of traders that are taking advantage of that. So it's a good time to do that. This volatility gives you ample trading opportunities, and it also, you know, when you have this much volatility in the markets, it's great because it gives you some margin for error. You know, if you mistime something, you have a little bit easier time getting, you know, massaging out of a position when you have this much volatility. So take advantage of it. All right, guys, and by the way, I'm long dollar CAD down here. I know you were looking for a little bit lower levels, Kman, but I'm actually starting to build a little bit of a dollar Canadian on alongside down here. So we'll see. Dale, it is all yours. Have a great interview.
Okay. Thank you, Kay, Ryan, Blake.
Thanks, mate.
You still with me, George?
Yeah, do you hear me?
Yeah, I got you, buddy.
Good
So,
stuff.
speaking of volatility, how did you like the tariff day? Because I know you were shorting USD CAD, so it was in your face that morning. How did you handle it?
It's all gone pretty well, and what I've done is I've stopped being an investor and rational and portfolio theory and all that stuff, and just joined fully into being a speculator. And with that mentality, we're doing all right. It's been pretty hectic, but we've been on the right side of things in general. April was about one of the wildest months I've gone through, and we're in the black, so things are good.
Who's we?
The royal we, Dale.
Huh?
I just deemed
Wait,
myself king. That's the royal we.
Okay, I was just wondering who all of you were. Uh, anyway, like look, George is on record. He got out of the market. He was worried about a constitutional crisis, which we could be heading into between the administration and the judiciary. And George was just was looking for a top in USD CAD and shorted that. And so, what other instruments are you trading?
I think it's a good idea to look at U.S. dollar Canada because from my point of view, it's a non-administrated rate. I really don't have much confidence in trading the euro, but for very technical view. But as far as any sort of macroeconomic or strategic point of view, I don't think it really bears watching in that way because the euro is administrated. As soon as the Trump administration gets their act together, Bassett will just sit down and decide where it should be. But Canada is different. Canada is a floating currency. And they always have to respond to the interest rate differential and also to the amount of dollars required for trade and other purposes. So therefore, the Canadian dollar is sort of like the honest broker in terms of indicating exactly what Trump is doing, what he can do, what he hasn't done. And it flew off to 146 when the market, 147 when the market had full belief.
Yeah.
And,
Now, this is what I wanted to add. I know we did your interview before this. It was
yeah,
before the tariff announcements.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
I know you were short USD CAD. How did you handle this day? What did you do?
Well, I just maybe it's because I spent too much time in Canada. I'm Canadian, supposedly. I hope my registered birth abroad doesn't get me kicked out of this country. But anyway, I'm a birthright citizen of America. But I just the massive amount of trade and interaction between Canada and the U.S. makes all of Trump's thoughts, announcements, and commentary, followed up by Lutnick and even Besant and certainly Navarro, nonsensical. Doesn't make any sense. It's an impossibility. It's a fantasy, a complete fantasy of what he's talking about in terms of Canada. They are not a fentanyl source of evil.
So you don't want to answer. You're dancing around the question. I know you have a memory of coming in, being short Canada on this day. Do you or do you not?
Well, right now I'm flat because I think the VIG's out of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about now. It's for people to learn because you're fairly new at being a trader. I'm interested in what you did. You know, it's your first year out there. It takes time to do it. What did you do this day when you woke up in the morning and USD CAD was up 200 pips in your face, making new all-time highs?
It was just nonsensical. It wasn't a possibility. In other words, the 147 level from any sort of macroeconomic or understanding of the Canada-U.S. relationship, short of like the United States invading Canada and occupying it, made no sense. So as soon as it flew up to 147, I rather aggressively got in there and I shorted the dollar, it worked out quite fine. We got the first
Okay,
nice.
so you used it so this was your opening position in Canada. You waited for this day to do it, even though we talked about it several weeks before.
It actually yes. As soon as he started to lambaste Canada, and also with Carney requiring to have the evil U.S. as his opposition so as he can win the election, both of them basically Carney and Trump are both sort of in cahoots here, if you can think of that. And the Canadian dollar, right from like the last quarter of last year to certainly to the 147 spike, just made no sense. Now I don't think I was good enough to get a penny or 2 pennies out of it, but when it got to like 6-7 cents over any sort of sense of reality, I bet fairly aggressively on that.
Are we fairly priced now?
I think we're close to something where I don't think you can outthink the market. It's probably back in your camp, Dale. I think technical analysis is probably the right way to approach it. And I'm not good enough for that. So I've exited the Canada US ever since it went down to we've had a low of 137, which is pretty well where it was last year.
Yeah.
Before all this hoopla. Now the other read I do have of the Canadian dollar is that I think Carney must have Trump as a boogeyman, as like the great enemy, and he's got to be the big hero. Pierre Poilievre, he's blowing it. He's not striding around and hating the U.S. So that's why the Liberals are ahead right now, despite the fact that they were like basically ready to be history like even 2 months ago. And so the Canadian dollar going down to 137 low and 138 odd where it is now, I think it's an indication that everyone's going to be rather surprised. And I think the PC, the Conservatives, are going to win the election. And it's based solely upon like how I see the trade relationships and the associations between America and the U.S. and what that means for the Canadian dollar and where the PCs are progressive conservatives, which is sort of an oxymoron, are situated now.
Okay, so do you think we have 130 in Canada?
I think we're right about here. Maybe if the Conservatives win the election, we could get back down to 134, 135. Then we'll rattle around there. But that's the market says that's rather the efficient level for currency, given the interest rate differential and also the terms of trade and also the amount of trade that's going on between Canada and the U.S. If Carney wins, then we could see another cheapening of Canada-U.S., i.e., U.S. dollar rallies, because he's an internationalist, this guy, and I'm not taking a political stance, but I forget Denmark owning Greenland. I think Carney wants to join the EU. It suits him, and so therefore he's going to try to create a crisis with the U.S. if he wins, where there is no crisis. The whole hoopla of Canada-U.S. is revealing to me that not only is Trump just in a fantasy land for Canada, but likely it justifies taking a look at everything he's done in terms of what is real and what is fantasy. And for the most part, I think I cheekily said, as I said last year and our last 2-3 years, and it's worked very well for me, that there is no Fed. I'm now saying that there is no Fed still. It's all talk, but I'm also saying there's no Trump. And so where we're going to go revert back to is is just the massive inflow that the fiscal impulse is still from Bidenomics. So in many ways, it's like the ghost of Biden had won the election as far as macroeconomics in the market goes. So anyway, that's the thesis. Maybe it's a little too fantastic, but that's how I'm trading.
Okay, well, I would, there's no, I can't pull a trade out of that diatribe.
I'm sorry, Dale. We're in different we're different tribes.
All right,
but I
well,
tell you, I've had a hell of a good time day trading Canada. It was a lot of fun.
so you're day trading.
Yeah, just in and out, back and forth. I didn't want to carry overnight, that sort of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Are you reading about trading? Are you anyone teaching you? I mean, this is
Dale.
what are you doing?
I think despite the fact, my background is a portfolio manager and a very structural approach to investing.
It's not day trading.
I wouldn't be surprised that how much money I've lost in trading is probably greater than what most people ever gained in their life. And in the end, we're all traders, I guess.
Well,
I have some experience.
Yeah, you had a lot of wisdom to step aside from the market. Before we had a 20% pullback in the S&Ps. Are you tempted? Right. Are you tempted to come back in at the now that things have gotten cheaper?
I went long. What I've done is I divided my net worth, liquid net worth, and I got a chunk of money that I just can't lose. Like we all have. And then I got a chunk of money that's saying that if I lose all of it, well, the risk manager won't be happy and I won't be happy, but at least I'll survive.
Right.
And
Smart.
The size of that money is based upon the opportunity I see. And I think right now is one of the better opportunities that the market's presented itself, or at least you can correct yourself quickly if you're wrong, for a very significant bull market in the equity. And I decided this on March 17th when Roberts came out and chastised and basically gave instructions to Trump to back off, to get back into the Constitution. And that, to me, ended the constitutional crisis that was brewing. And since then, the courts have kept up at it, and they're just not backing down. And the Supreme Court now has a majority of Federalists with the minority liberal guys, which means that we have at least a 5-4 majority that will pretty well cut Trump off at the knees. They don't appreciate what he's been saying. They don't. They're the guardians of the Constitution, and he's gone rogue. So what this means is almost all of Trump's policies, because it was made with executive orders and not working with Congress, are null. They don't exist, is probably the smart-ass way to say it. That being the case, I went pretty long March 17th, and then as the market, rallied pretty nicely off 5,200, and then I've actually started to deploy leverage in my spec account. I know this is sort of like playing with words, but I'm about as long as I can get, I think, given the risk.
What are you buying? What sectors?
I got. I took off my J.P. Morgan love and Boeing, and because they're a pretty bad loss down at the bottom. I went in a little too early with them. And
who told you to get out the banks before?
Tax did. The IRS did.
Okay.
And it's I just wanted a tax sale, and I didn't want to have it wash, so I replaced that with Goldman Sachs and RTX for a bit, but RTX is a bit of a dullard. So I have Goldman Sachs. My Canadian trade now is expressed in Magna. That's the fairly large Canadian parts and kit company. They box up all the parts in a car and send it off in a box. And then I also have Boeing and J.P. Morgan still, but it's in my IRA that I set up so that I don't have a tax wash.
Any view on things like semis?
Nah, I'm not bright enough to ever trade that stuff. So I avoided it. I've never done it.
Oils are cheap.
No, I think I can understand why oils might be cheap or rich, but I tend to avoid technicals I mean like technology that I can't understand and I can't put a present value on because it has such a large discounting for future expectations. And I also avoid anything that's just basically a political decision, which I see oil as.
Okay.
So
Well,
I'm
I
in.
think it's good news that you're sanguine. So you really believe, well, at least for now, that there's been a shift. Do you think we're going to, China and the U.S. are going to come to some type of agreement?
I think that this has been 20, 30 years of build, and it's impossible to address this problem in such a short time. And thank goodness Trump doesn't have the power to address the problem as he wants, because that's a precursor to World War. And I know that sounds very dramatic, but that's the way it's always been. So
yeah, I've heard this expression, George, that when the trucks and the trains stop crossing the roads with goods, troops will appear.
Yeah, and I think China has a difficult problem. And this is just a personal read, but I don't think they have as firm a control over the country as we expect. It's pomp and circumstances and Xi and all that stuff. It looks like they got this locked down. But I think ever since Mao and then Deng's solution in Tiananmen Square, which wasn't really long ago, I think they're sort of like living by their wits. And they have a presentation that the country's solid and prosperous, is the biggest country in the world now, all this stuff, when really they have to appease various factions so that it doesn't fragment. And so trade with the U.S. is a very important part of their appeasement, such that the deal was with capitalists and other guys who want to be glorious to be rich, and China guys, was to allow this U.S. trade to get way beyond any sort of macro or sensible size, just because it bought them off. And they can't reverse. I think China be very concerned that if they were to at all listen to Trump, even, that their country goes to ruin. So they're carrying on. And I think the U.S. either has to say, okay, we're gonna have to put 50,000 troops in Taiwan and off we go. It's going to be bad news, or they got to back off and start to say, okay, what's the Plaza Accord type solution? What's the solution with China, such that they keep together, but we can spend 10 years to fix it? So what that means for me is that all this China stuff isn't happening. It doesn't exist. Now, sentiment's very real. And I know that I'm like 1% of the people out there, but they're rattling around. They're rattling around on fantasy and bullshit from Lutnick. I mean, just take a look at Lutnick. Is this guy at all like a Reagan or a Baker? If you remember the Reagan cabinet,
Right, sure, yeah,
yeah. So he's just slapdash. He doesn't know what the hell he's doing, and I don't think Trump knows what the hell he's doing. And Navarro is, he's just almost a made-for-fiction macroeconomist book guy.
Oh, they sent him to the basement.
Yeah, they got him out of sight. That's for sure.
So do you think that there's going to be a nuclear deal with Iran, or is it going to go military?
I think the big danger here is that I think Trump disagrees with everything I just said, and as it gets frustrating for him, the usual way for characters like him in power, and I know, is to have a war.
Yeah, to distract and unify.
Yeah, I mean, that's what Putin did, and I think Trump might give it a go, but I don't think Hegseth has acquired the confidence or the oversight of the Pentagon that's required for him to do this.
Okay, I don't think he'll ever be able to.
Yeah. So
do you think that's going to stop him though?
No, Reagan was bright enough to attack Grenada, which nobody gave a shit about. But this is a different situation altogether, and they can't like lock the guy up in a closet for another 3 years, but there's going to be a fair clipping of Trump's wings, and I don't think he has any of the what he calls the deep state, but I call it just the functioning bureaucracy and management of the government on his side. I think they all loathe him, and maybe for good reasons, maybe for bad reasons, but he doesn't really have as much power as people think.
Okay. It's a view I haven't heard from anybody. And George is a thinker. And if you want to look, he was at Solomon Brothers, and they were the kings. Okay. In the good old days, Solly, they were the Goldman of the 80s. Right, George?
I like to think they always were, but
yeah.
I got to admit, I got a job offer for Goldman back then, and I was the stupidest move I ever made is that I told him to bugger off. And gosh, I wish I took it. Yeah.
Yeah, and Cargill, big name.
And Cargill,
yeah,
a lot of weak guys and everything, and and so on.
You know, as a trader now, start paying attention to the grains, because you know what I found interesting is that you know, they talk about how the farmers were going to be decimated by China not buying grains. Take a look at the grain charts. They've discounted it. They discounted it.
I'm probably a piker that just you know, got onto the craps table and had a good night, and that's probably going to be my doom in the end. But did quite well in Canada.
You know, now that you're day trading, I'd like to be your broker. Yeah, you ever see the commercial, the brown bag broker?
No.
All right. Well, he put a paper bag over his head. It was a parody on. It was a parody. It was a commercial a long time ago. Parody of the unknown comic from the Gong Show, and he'd have a bank of phones in front of him.
Right. The broker I want was Hillary Clinton's broker. What was his name? Red Dog or something like that?
I don't know. She read an article in the Wall Street Journal. That's how she made that money in cattle. But the unknown broker has that paper bag over his head, a bank of phones, and this is what he does. Sounds good. Yes. Let's do it. Sounds good. Let's do it. Sounds good. Let's do it. Sounds good. Let's do it.
And able to change the side depending upon who the incoming call was. Yeah, go long. Oh, yeah, short.
Anyway, George, you know, I wish you much success in your new trading career. But I know it's not new when I look at your background. But you know what? For the heck of it, if you're going to do it, you know, look into finding some tools that you could use that.
Well, I woulda, coulda, shoulda. I might have. I think if I could redo everything, I would have gone into. I would go into commodities, then repo, and then the last possible choice was fixed income. Of course, at the back in the day, it was all reversed. But if I joined your crowd, I think I'd be having a lot more fun now.
Yeah. Well, I think that. What you're going to want to look at is not things that people own, but things that people use that hurt if you drop it on your foot.
Yes.
Right.
So and that's what I stumbled in with the Canadian dollar is that it's not it's a utility. It's just something.
It's a natural resource currency.
Right, and then some. You know, a lot of auto stuff and steel and stuff like that. So it's not just resources, but to think you're going to like isolate and cut off Canada is like saying that you're going to isolate and cut off all of New York, upstate New York, and actually the whole band of 200 miles wide from the northern part of the U.S. It just can't be done.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to tell all the flag manufacturers to stop putting on that additional star on the flag. All right, buddy.
You know, as a Canadian, I once had my my father-in-law, ex-father-in-law, leave the table in great anger. He is Canadian. On Thanksgiving, was that I made the case. This is like 20 years ago, that Canada should just join the U.S. because there'd be like 11 22 senators that would go into the Senate that would never leave. So just like Texas used to run the Senate and House, Canada would end up running the U.S. But anyway.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, you got some political guys going. So over there. Anyway, there's one thing I reject, that you don't have to be Republican to be bullish of stock market.
No,
and you don't have to be Democrat to be bearish.
Yeah,
trade your charts.
Definitely a huge opportunity for everyone else is that the amount of partisan views that's being expressed loyally in the stock market and any market now is just incredible.
It's ridiculous. You got to fade it. Anyway, George, my good friend, kick some butt. All right, man.
Okay. Dale, I've always enjoyed this, and I hope you have me back.
I will.
Okay,
man.
Sir.
All right, George. Pay attention to George and check him out at on X at Bicker and Brattle, and go to his Substack, the Monetary Frontier Substack, so you can read what he's thinking. And that's a wrap. That's a wrap, everyone. Don't just count your pips, count your blessings. And I'll see everyone tomorrow. Good hunting the rest of the day. I'll see you.
Okay, Dale. Thanks a lot.
All right, buddy. That's a wrap, everyone. Have a great day. Good hunting. Adios.